that demographic. These are just pressing times in general, in regards to, people are cooped up at home with COVID. They are, you know, not really able to eloquently explain their frustrations or have a vector to let them out because of COVID. And then, the community as it stands is just generally uneducated about many, many things. And the way to, force change on this current topic of, inequality and injustice is to empower people. And the best way to empower people is with knowledge. And the underbanked or unbanked, typically knowledge, unfortunately, in our economy and system is reserved to, people with money. If you don't necessarily have a smartphone or, have access to certain financial literacy to even find certain places. Sometimes you have to subscribe for information. Sometimes you can find it. But either way, generally, that type of uh, education comes as, the income increases. So being able to income or increase the income of the underbanked and unbanked and give them a vector to have the same tools and same education as some of the more privileged is a good vector to just arm them with knowledge and arm them with, tools to execute something.
Could you kind of discuss the dynamic between unprivileged like sectors of society and Bitcoin? Um,
Sure. Yeah. I
any
mean,
thoughts on that?
yeah. So kind of going along with what I said before, if we're specifically talking about, so just to talk about the unbanked and underbanked, a lot of people that I come into, conversations with that are low income or, unbanked, underbanked type of situations, they don't know what Bitcoin is at all. There was a guy, I bought a washer and dryer from him on Facebook. He was a Latina man. He worked in construction. Super nice dude. He asked me what I did because he saw I was on Shark Tank, and I tried to explain to him. And he was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "What's what?" He was like, "Bitcoin." And I was like, "Surely by now you've at least heard the word like once. Like most people I come across or in contact with, I've heard the term Bitcoin somewhere, but he had never heard of it at all. And it was just a portion of society that, I hadn't been around since, earlier in my life. As I've been able to do pretty well for myself. So the type of communities and people that I come into contact with are usually financially literate. And it was very interesting having to explain what Bitcoin is, how it works, how it can be a benefit. Um, and I think that, it all comes down to education. That education hasn't matriculated down to some of the uh, less privileged classes in society, I guess.
I've been kind of surprised by the way in which the dialogue within the blockchain community has evolved from when I first entered the space, when it was really
Sure.
kind of about like liberty and like
Yep.
anti-establishment, banking the unbanked, getting away from the Federal Reserve, etc. These were a lot of discussions that I remember hearing. To now, it's like a price obsession
Mm-hmm.
and a enterprise focus. Could you
Mm-hmm.
discuss what Bitcoin represents to you?
So Bitcoin represents an idea. Bitcoin specifically is not practical enough or sustainable enough to be used in any commercially viable way. It's too slow. It's built on, technology that's outdated now. It's just a proof of concept of how something could work. Now, that sentiment has grown into, a multi billion-dollar industry because there's many ways to apply that concept. You can apply that concept um, as a way to exchange money, like Ripple is. You can apply the underlying technology to our web applications and the internet, like by using smart contracts and things like that. So there's all sorts of things that the underlying technology or the underlying premise of Bitcoin is giving to the community But Bitcoin as itself, my sentiment is most people view it as something to get rich with, or a tool to get rich with. The financially illiterate, they're like, oh, if Bitcoin goes up to as high as they think it might, I can make a bunch of money. I need to invest now. Whereas the financially literate people, the traders, the gurus, they know, okay, if this market manipulates enough, I can make a bunch of money as it manipulates because of the high volatility. So people are kind of really viewing it from two angles that aren't necessarily productive. I think the people that are viewing it, you know, in productive ways are the people that are trying to apply, the underlying technology or the underlying thought of Bitcoin to other areas of the world.
You have an interesting perspective. Like you made this post, and right now my Instagram feed's filled with like black images of, just black screens, and you
Sure.
kind of talked about like how there should just be respect, compassion, and general common sense amongst us humans as a population, as a community.
Sure.
How does Bitcoin kind of bind us all together as just humans?
You know, that's an interesting thought. So, what I kind of think about that is Bitcoin is a place where every human and every person becomes equal. So, when you're transacting with Bitcoin, your wallets are encrypted, your identity is encrypted, in theory. In a perfect system, you could transact with Bitcoin and no one could know who you are. So, that underlying premise that I was talking about, you know, from a perspective of us humans, if we came together in that type of system, it's kind of a level playing field. No, everyone is just a wallet, or everyone is just, a human, or everyone is just what we are, not defined by what we look like or what we say or how we talk, or how we may do things differently. So yeah, I mean, that was a great question because I had a really good answer to it.
Yeah, I think that this is, like I said, a timely piece for Cointelegraph. I think they're going to be stoked, and I think they're going to also like want more material from you as well. But
Okay. Yeah.
can you talk about putting all your energy into finding a sustainable solution to start carving a path to the future?
So what? So repeat your question while I'm thinking.
Like, how is Bitcoin, particularly the acquisition of Bitcoin through doing actions that one does anyway in their daily
Mhm.
lives, help carve a path, a sustainable path to the future? And
Oh, of course, of course. Yeah. So the main issue right now is people do not want to, have the desire to, or know why it's beneficial for them to invest and save for their future. So, that idea has typically been reserved to the financially elite. A lot of the people that come from wealthy backgrounds, they're taught very early on, to save money, to invest, to build money, to use your money and make more money. But there are very many communities that are not taught that. I'll give you a staggering statistic. About, I think it's 60% of Americans can't afford an unexpected $400 expense, which is insane to me. If you blow two tires, that's $400 for two used tires, not even new, depending on what kind of car you have. So being able to, round your spare change from everyday purchases into your future, use dollar cost averaging to mitigate volatility in a very high fluctuating but high rewarding asset. I mean, that's just a win-win. You're learning about how to invest in your future. You're seeing what that can do for you. You're seeing how such little money can compound into a large windfall or a large payment over time. And you're just kind of getting that concept early on. A lot of our users, typically the ones that we target, are either, and when I say early on, I mean early on in your financial journey, not early on by age. Early on in your financial journey, you're like, okay, I want more money. How do I get that? There's not many tools or many options or many situations where it's like, hey, if you're a beginner, come to us, kind of learn what this is about, set it and forget about it. see what investing can do for you. There's not really a tool like that on the market. Most of the tools are, again, reserved to that financially literate community, the people that, know what trading is, know what options are, know what stocks are going to perform well in any given week or day. Um, and there's just not enough tools for the people that don't know those things or don't have the desire or will or ability to learn about them themselves.
I come from like pretty much a middle class background, but I was surrounded by people who like were, I guess, pretty wealthy comparatively to a lot of people. I mean, I grew up
Sure.
in the coast in San Diego. I mean, my dad was a
Mm-hmm.
police officer. My mom was like a
Oh, wow.
bartender. And
Yeah.
I find like not even, and I find that nobody around me even has access to like, nobody around me is financially literate.
Yeah. It's astonishing. I mean, there's so many people that I come into contact with that, I'll be on Robinhood or on Bundil, and they'll be asking me like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm just like, "Oh, I'm looking at the price of crypto. I'm looking at the price of this stock or whichever it is." And they're like, "Wow, man, I wish I could learn how to do that, like, trading stocks and making money." And I'm like, "It's not hard. All you got to do is just have money and buy stuff." Like the barrier in people's minds is so strong. And I don't know if that is a product of you know, our current, economic system or a product of, just sentiment towards finance historically, but people just have a mental block when it comes to, sorry, when it comes to um, financial literacy. I mean, that's just, they just have a mental block when it comes to investing or finance or things that they think is hard because they think math is hard and they think you have to be a math genius in order to invest. And that's not the case. It's just it's a psychological problem that won't go away, unfortunately, in my opinion, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, when Joe Rogan signed an exclusivity contract with Spotify, I thought, I mean, if I was in the position to, I would buy some Spotify stock right now. And sure enough, the next day, like you saw, kind of they reaped the benefits of that decision, and anyone who owned their stock did as well. And that's not a math-based decision.
No, it's not. No, I mean, it can oftentimes be a bit of good advice. It can be a feeling. It can be just looking into the future. Hey, we knew most likely that COVID, and this is in the very beginning, whenever it started coming to the news, we knew that it was going to be a big problem. We saw how fast it was spreading. We saw how fast the media was covering it. Any sane, well, I can't say that. That's super biased, but any person that takes the time to really evaluate the situation may come to the conclusion, in my opinion, or should, that the stock market is going to go down. Businesses are going to shut down, revenue is going to be hurt. Stocks will inherently go down. So if you start shorting on a wide assortment of stocks at that point, you would be able to make money. And there's so many people in the world that just don't know that. Like that doesn't take much time to think about or extrapolate. You think about the situation and then, oh, what could happen if this actually does get really big? But people don't think like that. We're not taught to. So I want to help build tools and help people think like that because that's how you prepare for the future. Once you start predicting what's going to happen, you can learn to prepare for the future and make it the best for you.
Great. How does Bitcoin represent nature of adapting and evolving, or humans adapting and evolving?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have an immediate answer.
And it's something like I'm going to send this document back to you and we can pass it back and forth.
Sure. So the question is, how is Bitcoin
Like,
related to nature evolving?
no, how does Bitcoin represent like man evolving or adapting?
You know, Bitcoin is, I think, a first pass at correcting a fundamentally flawed financial system. So, our financial system is wildly unsustainable. Inflation is a big problem. Debt is a big problem. I mean, money is just created most often than not. Money isn't really backed by anything anymore. It's just we have a fundamentally flawed financial system. Bitcoin is, the culmination of a group of people coming together and saying, hey, could we use this and make it work? And, and the first step to solving any problem is admitting there is one. A lot of the people that are in a position where they have a bunch of money or have a bunch of assets or are very, very wealthy, these people don't care to change the system because it's benefiting them at that moment. People where, they can see that they're being hurt or there's some injustice or, the system is just flawed. It takes a group of those people to come together and say, hey, how could this work better? What could we do? And that's when things like Bitcoin become adopted for use, or that's when new technologies are created in order to solve that problem. And that's where the real innovators come in, which is awesome. So that's kind of how I would say that ties into how humans are evolving. Humans are like, okay, we need to recognize that this is a problem, first of all. Now that we have, what can we do to change it? How can we, adapt ourselves, adapt our mindset, change our outlook on something? Do we have to know exactly who bought that thing or who paid for what? Does it matter? Like, people are kind of like pondering and thinking of different solutions because the majority or a growing number of people are finding that the current solution doesn't work for them.
Any other comments on the intersection between crypto and kind of the sentiment that the things you've been thinking about lately, or that the country has been thinking about lately, and this post that you made?
Yeah. The one thing I don't know if we can include this. I would love to, just because, I just want to say it. I don't think that rioting and participating in protests or, going that route is particularly effective. If you go to a protest, all you're doing is inciting catastrophe. Yes, you may be educated and may know how to peacefully protest and may know, the rules and guidelines and best practices to do so. But there are people who want to get involved, who are very passionate and very upset, that do not. And that always is going to attract those people because it's a protest. That's literally what it is. It's attracting attention. And by nature, it's going to grow into something that's unattainable. So I don't think, or unsustainable, in that, violence will erupt or, things will be destroyed. So I don't think that's a good route to go. I think we need to come together as people, use our brains, figure out how to solve these issues and provide visibility into the injustice and do things that, we can from a practical level to snuff out the problem instead of just being mad about it and showing people that you're mad about it.
Great. Well, I think maybe there's a way to sneak that sentiment in covertly into this, and I'll do my best to do that and send this document back over to you for fact checking and
Cool.
Any final comments.
For sure, man. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm super excited. And I do get a question for you. So if they start wanting more content, how does that work? What do we do?
Well, we can talk about that once we get this under our belt, but I've developed a pretty good relationship with their opinion editor.
Okay.
And I've been able to I'm always kind of walking a line between what they want and then like making the brand happy with like a piece where they get their point across, etc. But like you're doing cool stuff, and honestly, like I wasn't gonna mention this on this call, but I have a Forbes.com contributor account, and I just like to interview and do a piece on Bundil and do for that as well
Sure.
in the future. But
yeah, for sure.
I'll talk to Max, who's their one of their editors there, and see if this is something he's interested in. And then this is kind of like my business, if you will. Like
Sure.
I kind of like ghostwriting and doing executive ghostwriting. That's kind of like my main income stream. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd love to make this happen for you on as many fronts as possible. And we can talk about that as soon as we get this first one published. And then as an aside, as a separate thing. And normally I don't mix these things, but I like what you guys are up to. I just love to put something out on you guys on my Forbes.com contributor site.
For sure. That would be awesome. And, you know, speaking of that, I don't know if you've done this before. So I want to write a book, not too long, maybe like 100 pages, 150 pages, something short. And, you know, obviously you can see I can talk a lot. And I know exactly what I want to say in said book. I just don't have time to write it because I didn't realize that writing a book takes so much time. I'm astounded how people just write books per month. I don't know how people do that. But have you ever done anything like that before?
I have done longer stuff. I've never done a book before, but it's something that I've wanted to do. And I think that the way to do that would be to lay it out, outline the book, and then for 100 pages, let's say we did 5 1-hour interviews, chapter by chapter. That would be the whole book. And then I would turn the interviews into prose. Organize it, simplify the text, and then I can have somebody edit it too.
Sure.
And we can go. I mean, that's something I definitely want to do. And I think that interviewing and then ghostwriting for the interviewee, so like you in this case, creates the best content. And I'm always telling people, I'm like, look, if like you want to get your message out there and you're not a writer or you don't have time to write, like just doing these interviews and having someone else do the writing, the actual writing for you is really efficient and it makes the best content every time.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're trained enough to put my voice into things because, I mean, you know, if you record my voice or record what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, you know how I'm feeling. So like it's the same thing. But yeah, if you know, after this is done, we should definitely talk about that. Cause like I've been trying to get that book. I've been trying to get it out for like a year and a half. And I finally like figured out like a title and like things that I want in it specifically. I just haven't had time to write it. So yeah.
I'd love to do that. That's something that I've wanted to do. And I've been trying to sell some people on that. And it's real simple process. It's like, I usually have been telling if people want a 200-page book, that I just need 10 1-hour long interviews. And that would be the entire book. And in this case, if you're going for 100, like I truly, genuinely believe that 5 1-hour interviews would get us to those 100 pages.
Dang, that's awesome. And a 100-page book is like a small, but like good sized book, right? If that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you know, and so I think the books are usually double spaced. So I mean, it's really only like 50 pages single space, but again, like we'll probably fall if with 5 1-hour interviews, we'll probably fall in between 100 and 200 pages. I'm guessing if we format it like a traditional book.
Sure. Yeah, and I haven't. Yeah, and that's another good point. I don't know if adding images or links to things or something like that would help well. It just depends on what we do. But yeah, I have. Yeah, we should definitely talk about that. Talk about either pricing or I don't know how that works. I know some people take royalties. I think publishers do that. Do you know how to get a book published?
Now, self-published?
Well, I don't know. I know the best route is to not do that. You know, I know a few authors that are like, you probably need to put some fire behind it.
So I think that I've heard everyone recommend that, like, okay, from what I've heard is that like the publishers won't look at anything unless it's given to them via their like network of agents.
Oh, really?
But maybe, I mean, there's ways around that. So the people I've spoken to about that are doing novels. They're doing like fiction works.
Sure.
So maybe because we have a unique niche here, that it'll be easier. There's people in our space who have book deals who, I mean, I'm just not sure how they get these things because they've been in the space for a very short amount of time. And if I were a publisher, like hearing from you would be far more interesting than hearing from a journalist who has a 1.5 years experience in Ethereum, for instance. So
exactly.
So let me think about that latter question. Definitely, like I can write No problem. And in 1 hour interviews, you'd have the entire book done.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Let's do it for sure. Yeah, I'll and you have my cell phone number, so if
Yep.
you need to get a hold of me, texting me is the most quick. So I'll open that up there. But yeah, if you don't text me, just shoot me an email and eventually I'll see it.
Cool. I'm gonna do this first piece and then I'll email it to you within 24 hours, and then yeah, I'll communicate via text.
Cool. Sounds awesome, man.
All right, thanks, Dmitri. Have a great evening. Thanks for meeting.
All right. You too. Talk soon.
All right, bye.